2581 BC. A man drops dead on the sand. He was not a slave. He was a foreman, one of the most skilled workers on the most dangerous construction site in human history, and he was the 43rd person to die that month. No one stopped working. No ceremony. No pause. The blocks kept moving. The ropes kept pulling, because Pharaoh Khufu had given an order, and that order could not wait. Not for the dead. Not for anyone. Most people think the Great Pyramid was built by thousands of slaves whipped into submission under a brutal empire. They are wrong. The real story is darker, more desperate, more human. This video exposes what 4,500 years of history have buried. The impossible decisions, the catastrophic failures, the human lives ground to dust, and the one engineering secret that modern science still cannot fully explain. Let that sink in for a moment. We have satellites that can map the surface of Mars. We have artificial intelligence that can model the collapse of a star, and we still cannot say with complete certainty how a group of ancient Egyptians, armed with copper tools and wooden sledges, managed to build the most precise large structure ever constructed on the surface of this planet. That is not an exaggeration. That is the documented scientific consensus today. This is the story of how they tried, how they suffered, how they nearly failed, and how, against everything that should have stopped them, they succeeded anyway. The year is approximately 2560 BC. Egypt is at the height of the Old Kingdom period. The Nile floods every year like clockwork. The harvests are good. The empire is organized, literate, and administratively sophisticated in ways that will not be matched again in the ancient world for centuries. And into this world steps Khufu. He is the second pharaoh of the 4th dynasty. His father, Sneferu, was already one of the greatest builders in Egyptian history. Sneferu built not one pyramid, but 3. He learned from catastrophic failure. His bent pyramid at Dashur changed angle halfway through construction because the engineers realized the original slope would cause it to collapse under its own weight. He corrected. He adapted. He finished. Khufu grew up watching his father build. He understood from childhood that a pyramid was not just a tomb. It was a theological statement, a physical argument about the nature of power and eternity. And Khufu was not content to match his father. He intended to surpass him so completely that no successor would ever dare attempt to compete. He chose a site on the Giza Plateau on the west bank of the Nile, elevated, solid bedrock beneath the surface, visible from a vast distance in every direction. He called his vizier Hemiunu, his own nephew, a man who held the title of overseer of all construction projects of the king, and he gave him an order that would have broken any other architect in the ancient world. Build me a tomb that touches the sky. Build it before I die, and make sure no one ever forgets my name. Hemiunu stood at the edge of the plateau and looked at the empty desert. He had no machines, no steel. He had rope made from papyrus and palm fiber, copper chisels that dulled after a few hours of use, wooden sledges, water to reduce friction on the sand, human bodies, tens of thousands of them. That was it. And he had approximately 20 years to build the largest structure on Earth. What happened next was not a miracle. It was a war against physics, against time, against the desert, and against the fundamental indifference of stone to human ambition. The numbers alone should make this feel impossible. The Great Pyramid contains approximately 2,300,000 stone blocks. The average block weighs 2.5 tons. The granite beams inside the king's chamber weigh up to 80 tons each. The structure rises to an original height of 146 meters. Its base covers over 53,000 square meters. Every surface was originally cased in polished white limestone so smooth that the entire structure reflected the Egyptian sun like a beacon, visible from over 150 kilometers away. To finish on schedule, workers had to place approximately 800 blocks every single day. 1 block every 1.5 minutes. Around the clock. Every day. For 20 years. No modern construction project of comparable scale has ever been completed faster, and we still do not know exactly how they did it. The stone came from 2 sources. The limestone core blocks came from a quarry directly south of the pyramid. Convenient, planned from the beginning. evidence that Hemiunu was executing a blueprint years in the making. The blocks were cut using copper chisels, wooden mallets, and water-soaked wooden wedges hammered into fault lines in the rock until the stone split free. But the granite was a different problem entirely. The granite required for the interior chambers came from Aswan, 600 kilometers to the south. In a world without trucks or roads capable of bearing multi-ton loads over that distance, the Egyptians used the Nile. They built massive wooden barges to float granite blocks weighing as much as a modern military tank downriver from Aswan to a canal system connecting the Nile to the plateau. The journey took weeks. Loading and unloading each block required dozens of workers and a degree of coordination that would be impressive in any era. In 2013, archaeologists working in a cave at the port of Wadi al-Jarf on the Red Sea coast found something that changed everything. They found the Merer Papyrus, the oldest papyrus ever discovered, a logbook written by a mid-level official named Merer, who supervised a team of approximately 200 workers transporting white limestone casing stones to Giza. The papyrus covers roughly 3 months of operations. It records every delivery, every departure, every detail of a logistic system of extraordinary sophistication, multiple teams working in rotation, inspectors checking quality at every stage, an administrative structure coordinating thousands of workers across hundreds of kilometers without a single piece of modern technology. These were not slaves. Merer's team received rations of bread, beer, meat, and fish. They had rest days. They rotated in and out of service on a schedule. The worker villages excavated near the pyramid confirm this. Industrial bakeries, breweries, butcher facilities processing enormous numbers of cattle. The workers who built the Great Pyramid were fed, managed, and treated as the skilled asset they were. The cemeteries tell the other side of the story. The bones of workers buried near the site speak a language no papyrus recorded. Compressed spinal vertebrae from years of carrying enormous loads. Worn down knee and hip joints. Healed fractures. Healed, which means they received medical treatment but fractured, which means the work was breaking them apart. One skeleton shows a leg amputation that the person survived by years. Someone on that plateau performed surgery in the desert 4,500 years ago, and the patient lived long enough to keep working. These were people, not abstractions. People who woke up every morning in the desert, drank their ration of beer, picked up their ropes, and went to work on the greatest construction site in human history. They had names. They had families back in their villages along the Nile. They scratched graffiti on the blocks, jokes, boasts, team names, knowing those words would be buried inside the pyramid forever, knowing that no one would ever read them again. They were right. It took 4,500 years before anyone did. Many of them did not go home. Now let us talk about the precision, because this is where the pyramid stops being impressive and starts being genuinely inexplicable. The base of the Great Pyramid is level to within 2 centimeters across its entire 230-meter length. The 4 sides are aligned to the cardinal directions, with a deviation of less than 3 arc minutes from perfect north, south, east, and west. To put that in context, the Burj Khalifa in Dubai, built with modern laser surveying equipment and GPS, has a base alignment less precise than a structure built 4,500 years ago. How did they level the base? The most accepted theory holds that the builders cut channels into the bedrock, filled them with water, and used the perfectly flat water surface as a reference line across the entire base area. Physically sound, but executing it across 53,000 square meters in desert heat, with thousands of workers moving around it constantly, that is an organizational challenge of the highest order. The alignment to true north is harder to explain. The Egyptians had no magnetic compass. The leading theory, proposed by Egyptologist Kate Spence, is that they used a pair of circumpolar stars, Mizar and Kochab, that around 2400 BC were positioned to straddle true north when observed from Giza. A skilled observer stretching a plumb line between those 2 stars at the right moment could establish a north-south reference line accurate enough to explain the pyramid's orientation. Elegant, well supported by the astronomy, but not definitively proven. The precision was not accidental. It was the product of knowledge we have only partially recovered. And then there is the construction itself. The ramp problem has dominated pyramid theory for over a century, and it remains unsolved. The basic physics are clear. To move a heavy block up an incline, you need a ramp gentle enough that human muscle can pull the load up it. The maximum practical slope is around 8%, but as the pyramid rises, the ramp must grow longer to maintain that slope. By the time you reach the top at 146 meters, a straight external ramp at 8% grade would be nearly 2 kilometers long, containing more material than the pyramid itself, and it would have to be demolished afterward. No evidence of a ramp system on this scale has ever been found at Giza. In 2017, French architect Jean-Pierre Houdin proposed a theory that has gained serious scientific attention. An external ramp was used only for the lower levels. For the upper levels, the Egyptians built an internal spiral ramp, a corkscrew running upward inside the pyramid's outer casing, invisible from outside, sealed permanently inside the masonry when the exterior stones were laid. Using microgravimetry scanning, a technology that detects density variations inside massive structures, his team found anomalies in the upper sections consistent with the hollow spaces such a ramp would create. It is not proven, but it is currently the most physically plausible explanation that modern engineering has produced for how the upper sections were built. The construction was not only a physical crisis, it was a human one. The workforce peaked at approximately 20,000 people on the plateau simultaneously. Workers came from across Egypt, farmers with nothing to do while the Nile flooded their fields, skilled craftsmen, a permanent core of specialists who lived at the site year-round. They died from falls, from crush injuries when ropes snapped, from heat, from infections, from the slow physical destruction of years of extreme labor. And through all of it, Hemiunu carried the weight they did not. He knew that Khufu was aging. He knew the window was closing. He knew that if the pyramid was not finished before the pharaoh died, everything, 20 years of work, tens of thousands of lives, could be rendered meaningless by a single change in political power. The pyramid had to be finished, not approximately, finished. Now let us go inside, because the interior is, in some ways, even more astonishing than the exterior. The king's chamber sits at the heart of the pyramid, constructed entirely from red Aswan granite. 9 ceiling slabs weighing between 25 and 80 tons each. Above them, 5 additional relieving chambers designed to distribute the weight of 100 meters of stone pressing down from above, channeling the load around the chamber rather than through it. The engineers who designed this understood structural load distribution at a level that would not be formally codified in architectural theory for thousands of years. Inside sits the granite sarcophagus. It is slightly too wide to fit through the passages leading to the chamber, which means it was placed there before the walls were finished around it, before the ceiling was sealed above it, before the relieving chambers were built. The entire interior of the pyramid was engineered around the final position of that single stone box. And when Arab explorers broke into the pyramid in approximately 820 AD, they found the sarcophagus empty. No mummy, no burial goods, no trace that a body had ever been there. Whether Khufu was ever interred inside, whether the chamber served a different purpose, whether his body lies somewhere else entirely, these are not answered questions. They are actively debated in peer-reviewed journals right now, without resolution. And the empty sarcophagus is not even the most unsettling discovery of recent years. In 2017, the Scan Pyramids project used muon tomography, a technique that uses naturally occurring cosmic ray particles to map the interior of large stone structures, and found a void above the Grand Gallery, a space approximately 30 meters long and at least 5 meters tall, completely hidden, completely inaccessible through any known passage, unknown to every person who had ever studied or entered the pyramid. The void is real. Multiple independent analyses have confirmed it. The debate is not whether it exists. The debate is what it is. No one knows. The Egyptian authorities have not authorized excavation. The void sits there inside the most studied structure in human history, 4,500 years old, completely unexplored. Khufu died. The pyramid was finished. History does not record the moment Hemiunu walked away from the completed structure. It does not record what he felt. He left no memoirs, no personal account, no reflection on 20 years of the most demanding project in human history. He left only the pyramid. It stood as the tallest structure on Earth for 3,800 years. From its completion around 2500 BC to the construction of Lincoln Cathedral in 1311 AD, 3,800 years during which no human being built anything taller. Empires rose and fell. Religions were born and transformed entire civilizations. And the Great Pyramid sat on the Giza Plateau, unchanged, unmoved, the tallest thing humanity had ever made. No modern structure approaches that record. After all the archaeology, all the scanning, all the physics, after the Merer Papyrus and the muon tomography and the microgravimetry surveys and everything that the 21st century has brought to bear on this problem, we do not fully know how they did it. We know pieces. We know the quarrying methods. We know the supply logistics. We know the workforce size and composition. We know the engineering principles behind the chambers. We know the astronomical theory behind the alignment. But the complete knowledge that Hemiunu carried in his mind, the precise sequence of construction, the exact methods for moving blocks to the upper levels, the decisions made in real time across 20 years on a construction site that killed people every month, that knowledge died with the people who held it. It was never written down in a form that survived. It was passed from master to apprentice, from foreman to worker, and then it was gone. What remains is the pyramid itself, standing in the desert, stripped of its white limestone casing by centuries of later builders who quarried the polished stone for mosques and palaces in medieval Cairo, worn by 4,500 years of wind and sand and the footsteps of millions of visitors. The capstone gone, the surface rough where it was once mirror smooth, and yet fundamentally unchanged, fundamentally intact, structurally sound in a way that should not be possible after 4,500 years of seismic activity, temperature extremes, and the slow grinding pressure of time. Hemiunu built it to last. He succeeded beyond any rational expectation. 4,500 years later, we are still standing at the base looking up, asking the same question, and the pyramid gives the same answer it has always given: silence.